Just gonna continue from where I stopped. It's this one. Probably easier to just copy everything. So yeah, probably. So I didn't include. I just copy some of the includes, but I didn't copy two includes, which are ones that are from the editor path. So it's probably just the easiest thing to do is just copy. I'm gonna copy all the function declarations, and then I'm going to implement one by one, define one by one. And then I try to compile, and then there's probably gonna be error messages. So let me just copy everything here. Then from the error messages, I can see what parts are directly related to the editor. And that's probably the easiest thing to do. I don't think they are on the same order. Next order, give me inputs. This one is probably the one that I'm gonna have to change. Rise ladder. Yeah, so now compile, see what's wrong. Is this the only thing? So if it is the only thing, I'm just going to copy, I think. So I'm gonna see what ChatGPT has to say about the fact that this class is not on the, it doesn't show up there on the editor. Show add as a part of the scene. Editor scale, I got scale. So this comes from the themes, the editor. So the scale is probably gonna be 1. I think that you can zoom in and out on the editor probably. Or I'm not really sure though. So let me... Debating whether or not to make it as a macro or should just put it as a float. And here is the macro. I think I'm just gonna do the same way that they do it. But this might be, I think this one. I guess I can just use the same name. It's whatever. Because the problem with using the other name is that, like, it's just gonna take it away from being able to use in other places, and maybe app scale is like convenient to use on somewhere else. So I think using the same name and just changing, because obviously based on the way that they do there, I think it is meant to be used. Like this is gonna be based on editor settings probably. But then I can't really use the same, because it's also gonna run into the same problem that already is defined. So maybe just put BM scale stuff. Yeah, maybe doesn't matter. Let's try again. Hmm. Oh, it's not equal. Yeah, it's different. I don't know if I need to put the parentheses. Oh, there's another problem there. Hmm. It's 5 by default. Actually, let me. Already has here. It's gonna be 5. Interesting. So I guess this is the box. Maybe it's this box here, I think. Yeah. Interesting. And this is very, very weird because it feels like it doesn't matter what position I put there. It's always behind. So there's probably a way with layers or stuff like this to change the label there, but it's more annoying, so I was trying to avoid doing that or having to think about this. But I think with layers it might be possible to make sure that label is always rendered in front of the nodes. There's probably several different ways to do it as well. So since it works there, I'm just gonna leave it like this. And then I'm gonna move on to the other one. I'm contemplating whether or not it's worth it to spend time understanding the nuances of this. But I think it's probably gonna be better. Because the main thing that I'm probably gonna change, if I, like, in case I wanna change something, is gonna be this style. Like the color of the thing and the thickness, maybe, of this slider, stuff like this. I think it's probably better to just implement the other one now. Then see if it's gonna be the same, and then I figure out how to make it so that it, when the value changes, is gonna be connected with the other stuff there. So I assume that it's gonna send. It definitely triggers something. It emits a signal probably when it changes the value. So what I have to do is just search for the signals. So grab start and ground. I think it's gonna be easier from the other class probably to think about this. Because the other one's gonna be harder as well to convert because it's gonna be related to other functionality. But I think mainly what I have to figure out is, I assume that probably what happens is that when you change the value of the slider, it's gonna emit a signal, and then based on the signal, it updates the values on the class using the setters and getters that the class has based on that property macro, which is probably gonna happen on this class here. But maybe it should happen on this one as well. But I think the other one probably uses the state of this class to update the class, because here it seems that it doesn't have anything that's directly correlated with updating. It's just changing the value that shows up there, but it doesn't do anything else. So the other one probably, and the main difference is going to be on the constructor. I'm going to do it on the constructor initially, but that based on the way that they do the classes, is probably better to change it to a function and initialize the class the same way that they initialize there. So on the other component that I'm gonna have, I'm going to set the values, I think, based on the barn set parameter. I have to. This one is gonna be hard to convert. So maybe on this one it's better to convert one thing at a time. It's gonna be too many errors, I think. But just put everything. I'm trying to just... And there's also stuff related to other things here. So it does do that. I think actually I'm going to move, because probably the way that they do it there is based on the setup function. So probably in the beginning, I just sat with the same values here, and then on the setup function they just change so that it works on the same way. Just gonna copy everything that's not related to the editor. It's gonna be confusing to do everything though. Because I have to see if I copy one at a time, like it's gonna be confusing too. Yeah, but I guess I'm just gonna get the error when I try to compile, so it doesn't matter that much. So probably the first one that I'm gonna do is gonna be the setup, because I wanna see. I'm gonna do the setup initially in the same way, and then I'm gonna change so that it works with the stuff that I have there. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do differently. So here, I'm just gonna pass positive only. It's probably easy to leave like this. Like, I think that the other one I just left the same way because obviously I'm trying to do the least amount of work for the highest reward. So I think that it's probably a lot better to just start with the same default that I have. And then once I get to the point where I can connect this class with the stuff that I have, I think it's gonna become easier to see whether or not it's worth it to change so that it works in a different way. But I think I'm just gonna leave it like this now. And I'm going to remove this from here. So I'm basically just gonna, but this is kind of the issue because, yeah, so instead of initializing, yeah, but if I do initialize the stuff here, it might mess up other stuff. Because it is kind of redundant if you have to do both. But maybe, I think it doesn't matter that much. I'm thinking about where do they put the name? Maybe somewhere else. I have to look into the other function that initializes this one to understand more. So I'm just gonna leave it like this. And I'm going to... Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna put this stuff here because I have to remember to change this later. Actually, this makes more sense. So copy everything. Now it's probably better to go like on chronological order, so from top to the bottom. I think this is gonna be easier since there's a bunch of stuff on this file here. Maybe the notification first. I think I'm gonna do all of them, and then once I finish all of them, I'm going to add the functions on the bind methods. So let me go in chronological order from here. So, Probably try to compile each time, I think. Yeah, but the problem is this. So it's probably default value. It's false. Defaults. I'm just gonna transfer those functions to this class instead. I'm not really sure if I should also use this GD virtual call. Just subscribe this stuff with GD script. Probably I should. This is kind of weird. Yeah, I don't like this very much. Oh, but this is another class. It might make more sense to just do the same way that they're doing here. So because I'm gonna end up having to do like a bunch of work. Like it makes more sense to have that as the reason why they don't have the definition on the base one is because it's supposed to be whatever class, the class that is going to derive is going to implement based on its own control nodes. The default of the state of whether or not is to read only, and it changes from class to class, obviously, because it's going to change what control node is being used to change the state. But the problem is, if I do it this way, the way that I'm doing it here, I'm going to end up having to do like a bunch of work, because I was going to translate the function to, like, it's going to be kind of pointless. I was going to translate this function to this class here, and just translate the value, and then just change the way that it is there. But then eventually I might have to end up doing the same thing. So like the main reason I think for not using, or for not registering these classes on the class DB is because they're going to be connected at some point, I think, with the editor settings or something like that. So it might be just better to, because it does feel kind of pointless to do it. And basically you're just copying everything, just changing the name. But it might be better to do this way, because then it sets me up in a way that I'm going to be able to change the default state for the class. Like, even though in the beginning it's going to be the same, I might want to change the classes, and then it's not going to affect the ones on the editor, obviously. And then it goes back to the, like, I'm going to fall into the same situation that I've been through a couple of times, which is whether or not to copy everything, then refactor later, or copy one at a time. And it's always hard to know because of the line. So the question is, how do you draw the line there of what of this stuff is related to? I think for this situation, it's probably just better to copy everything. You know, thinking. So just copy this class and then copy the other one. Then change the names, try to compile, and I'm just going to change from the editor to BM, the prefix on all of them. And then remove all the includes from the editor settings. Then try to compile is going to give me a bunch of warnings of everything that is related to the editor. And then once I try to refactor, I'm going to be able to understand more how it works. But it might be better to just copy one at a time, because it might be too many errors. So I think I should copy this class first. So probably it's a better idea to just copy this class first, because this one is the base one for the other one, obviously. Then see if I have to change anything on this one. Then after I get this one down, I just change the other one so that it inherits from this one instead. I'm gonna put some separate files, I think. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna have to delete this one so I don't get. I'm just gonna comment everything out on here and then delete the definitions, because otherwise I'm gonna get errors related to this. I think this one I can leave it like this. I'm doing it on the wrong one. No, yeah, that was right. So it's here. So this one I'm gonna actually delete, I think. The other ones I leave there. So I'm gonna see if it compiles like this. Now let me do the other class first. They're just gonna be the same name. It's gonna be BM property. I think this way makes more sense, because it's gonna allow me to like do the least amounts of changes. So the key thing is to understand the relationship between classes, I think. But outside of this one, I think like for the other ones, I'm gonna have to probably, because like in order to understand how this is used to update the other stuff, I think I'm gonna, but I might get errors on the class that inherits from this right away, which is gonna lead me into the other class that's, I need to figure out what exactly is the class that uses these classes here. But it's probably the one that I wrote down here. So it's probably this one that uses these classes. Yeah, it's definitely this one that is going to use, but I still don't know the relationship, obviously, of how this class here is going to use this class, and like in the context of the whole thing, to update the state of the actual classes. But I think that I can get away with just copying this one, because, and then the more classes I copy is going to be easier to figure out the rest, I think. So I do think that this one is probably the base one. The main issue with this, as always, is that you never know, because like a paradox, you don't know. In order to be able to copy, you have to know the relationships, but then it defeats the point, I think. So like the challenge is to draw the line of where to put each thing. Because this is the problem, this one's gonna involve everything else. So how do you cut? You're just gonna copy and then comment out this stuff. Yeah, but this is the problem. And this is why it's kind of tricky to think about, because like the whole point of trying to do this is to like just get the same layout that they use on the control nodes, but I want to be able to use it without having to like couple these classes with the objects, because one of the classes would be, for example, to be used on on the Brahma settings there. So this is kind of the problem, like on the Barnsat solver. Because if the class is designed in such a way that it's going to force me to, based on the class hierarchy, or the class hierarchy and the relationship between the different classes is going to force me to have the states that is dependent on the object, then it's kind of bad. That's the issue. Because like it makes sense for this one should be like this, but then like this slider should be separate, I think. I should be able to separate each class so that I'm able to couple the value or couple the functionality with another thing. But maybe the only thing, like, if I want to do this, the only thing I have to do is just to change the, or to emit the signal on the value, emit the global signal when the value is changed, and then when on the graph 3D, I just listen to the signal. Let me think about this. So I guess I just copy one by one here, and then I try to see if I can find, or if it makes sense, the line, because I'm kind of confused. It's not very clear to me. The problem is that there's two main reasons why I want to use the elements, and they're both different. So one would be for the same reason that they do here, which is to update the values of the edges and the nodes on the visualization to allow for customization. And the other one will be to update the values of the physics simulation. But the physics are not they're not coupled with a property that is part of an object. So like I want to be able to use the GUI elements to control functionality that is not necessarily coupled to a class, as a function or as a member of the class. So yeah, the idea would be to make the functionality of this classes dependent or interact with the, but I think it's probably I'm overcomplicating on my mind, because it's just gonna be I copying everything, and then I just, instead, like on the places that the sliders, for example, or the GUI elements emit signals, I just emit a global signal, and then I can couple the functionality with whatever I want there, I think. Yeah, but I think, yeah, this is the problem. So if it forces me to connect this with an object, then it is a problem. Because then if you don't have this attached to anything, it's not going to work. So I guess this is what I have to see. It's like how to make it so that this doesn't force having, it doesn't couple with the object. So this is the thing that I have to see how to do. If it does force, which I think it does because of this value here. And because of the property. So I assume that the properties are going to be related to functionality that I have to get the properties of a class based on the class DB. So the class type is registered on the class's global object, which is class DB, or is another class that the class DB uses to contain the information for each class. And then there's some functionality related to the properties of the class. And I assume that probably on here somewhere they're gonna call some of these functions to get the properties from the types of the classes. So the question is how to change this in a way that it doesn't force me to couple the logic here with a class. Or maybe I should just do, yeah, maybe I'm like, because it's gonna be easier to just. And the thing is, it feels kind of pointless if I have to do like just completely separate classes because I'm gonna do the same work both times, and then just change one of them so that the other one works. Yeah, I think it has to be the same class. I just have to change the state of the class, so the arguments of the functions and stuff like that. So this is the challenge, I think. So maybe the easiest way is to just copy everything, then make it compile, then remove one thing at a time. Just see what happens. Because I think it's gonna be a lot easier to just see it from the like, isolated thing instead of just stepping over from the actual class from the editor. But I guess I can put breakpoints here as well on these functions. But I think it's easier to see what the thing does if I remove. Probably. So I'm gonna copy everything, then change the name, then try to compile. It's probably gonna get errors, and then look for the errors. Oh yeah, I have to change here. Property. Oh. So I should do like this. I don't think it's gonna allow me to do this because I had problems in the past with forward declaring class that's the other one's gonna inherit. So I'm probably gonna have to include the thing here, which might be problematic. But I'm gonna try to do like this first. But this is probably... Actually, I'm not really sure. I don't think I registered there, but... It's gonna be very confusing to do in the beginning. But it's probably something else, the reason that I was complaining there. Because obviously it was inheriting from container before. It's probably because of the control. Let me see. There's the other one that has control. I have to comments everything else here. I don't think it matters that much if they have the declaration but don't have the definition, but yeah. So I'm gonna see if it compiles first without anything here. Then I'm gonna uncomment everything and I'm just gonna copy from the other one and change the name only. And probably see the errors, so I think I should probably... That's pretty sure. Like the challenge is to figure out what is the best way to clarify where the coupling is from this class with the properties, and then whenever you have the coupling, you just change the function enough so that I can put an argument, for example, that's going to check whether or not the class is a property or is connected to something else. Or maybe just leave it. Yeah, but I can't really leave it like this because ideally I would be able to implement the class without having to couple with an object. Because the main thing that I want is just the visualization of the node. So like just to have it in the way that it looks there. And to be able to attach the functionality of what happens when you change the value to whatever I want. So I think that this is probably the main difference. Yeah, but I can, yeah, so if I find the points of connection, then I can just change the function so that they don't require to have an object to do whatever. So I can just put condition to check to see if the class is connected to an object, and if it isn't, then I just emit a global signal or something like that, or emit a normal signal. And then based on the normal signal on the other classes, I can just attach the functionality that I want to change the physics. And then if it is connected to an object, then I just change that object instead. But I think that this is kind of the problem because it's gonna be like this class is gonna be used on the other classes, and the other class is gonna be the one that communicates with class DB. It's gonna make it harder to maybe it's just void here. Or no, I didn't. I'm gonna put it like this. Oh yeah, I have to comment this other stuff out. So I'll be right back. I think I'm gonna stop streaming soon. I'm just gonna copy this stuff here. Because I'm going to just be copying stuff, I think, in the beginning. Obviously, like I have to think about whether or not this way makes sense. Because the question, as always, is but for this situation, I think it is probably better to just copy everything and then try to fix one error at a time. Because I do think that the BM property class is the base class of the other ones, and is the last one, let's say. So they're probably going to be several different functions. But maybe I should spend some time there, like just looking through all the functions and then just seeing if any of them are gonna interact with the editor or stuff like that. Like the other potential way is just to implement like from scratch, because the main thing I want is the visual way that it shows there. But also it is nice to have like the functionality when it comes to the updating the classes, because I know for sure that it works because it is the same way that they do it on the editor. So I think the only issue with copying is that is not gonna, it might not work for other stuff that is not coupled with classes. So it's probably better to just copy and then I copy the base class and try to figure out. It does feel kind of, I think it makes sense, but I'm thinking about that there might be a better way to do it. That's the problem. As like, it does make sense to put that function on the base class and then to implement in a different way on the derived classes. But this is the whole problem, is that it couples the thing. It couples each element together with the other stuff, which doesn't feel very good to me. Like there seems that it should be. But I think it makes sense because of the context, because the class is used for any generic object. So What the fuck? It's gonna OBM property. Also here. Just gonna copy. Let me see the first one. And I copy everything. That's probably here. And this is the issue. It's gonna be coupled with other stuff. That's the problem. Yeah, so now, pretty sure I copied everything. Maybe not. Hmm. Yeah, I'm confused. Obviously, I know that is going to throw a bunch of errors. So, but I don't know why it doesn't find that there. Let's see. I'm gonna copy again. Because I think I missed some of them. They might be separated as well. Yeah, they are separated. So this is probably why I missed. So maybe it's gonna be easier to copy one at a time from the declaration there. Actually, now that I think about it, it doesn't make sense. Like, what I'm trying to do is not exactly the same. Because here is going to be one object at a time. There is going to be, like, it's not a specific... Like, the object that is going to change is going to depend on the visualization, I think. So it's not like I'm going to have access to the object in the same way that you have on the editor. You can select each object to change. So it's completely different, I think. Yeah, what I'm thinking more about doing is, like, based on the value that changes, I'm gonna put the functionality that searches for whatever object it is. And then I think it makes more sense because I'm gonna change the... So let me, like, for example here, like this is like from the graph, I change the state of the edges. So it's like something like this that I'm thinking about doing. And here I was gonna put as well. So I just put colors, but I was gonna put radios and stuff like this. But it's gonna be connected to the graph. It's not the same thing. Because there is supposed to change for one object at a time. And this is the part that is like I'm having trouble thinking about. What is the best, like, what is the best way to copy, like, because I know I have to change, but I'm not really sure if it's gonna be a waste of time if I just copy everything and then I change later, or if I should. I think because the main thing that I want is not the functionality, it's just the way that it looks. So the question is how can I make it work just based on the way that it looks and decouple from everything. But I do think that it might be easier to just copy everything and then just remove the functions that are related to the properties and class DB and stuff like this. Yeah, I think, but the problem is like the way that they did here. It's kind of weird. Because then it becomes kind of pointless to copy this one. I should only use the other one, which is the one that I want. This is the problem. I think actually I should forget about the their implementation, and I should think more about, because it's not exactly the same thing. I was confusing the things. Yeah, I think mainly I want the way that it looks, but for the way that it's gonna change, it has to be decoupled. So I need to get to a point where I have the base where it's just the way that it looks, and then it has to work based on the functionality, whatever functionality I want, which is probably gonna be on signals. So just probably connecting the events. And then I'm gonna have to implement the functionality anyway. So in case I want to do it in the same way that they do here, what I can do is just implement the same functionality that they use here, but on the function that is called on the signal, like from outside, because it has to come from the context of the application you're gonna do. So I'm not really sure if I should. Because this one is coupled on the other one. It's probably coupled on more places though than only this function here. So maybe, yeah, before I translate the other one, it might be better to just replace this with a value and see, like replace this with false, or just comment it out, comment out the thing, and then just see how it looks if I maybe should compile. That might be better actually. Because it's gonna be a waste of time to copy everything else. Yeah, I think that's probably better actually. So I should just try to get the classes only to the points where it allows me to create something that looks in the way that I want. Because then the functionality related to that I'm gonna have to create from outside. So like I'm gonna use those ones as baselines, and I'm gonna have to create the functionality on another component that is gonna use these ones. And then like once I get to the point, then I think it makes more sense than to just try to copy here, because is the point where they are coupled. So like the way that is working here is that these classes are going to inherit from the other one, and then the other one is kind of works as a base of the tree, and the other one is connected to the context of the editor that is going to manipulate the stuff, the classes that are changed, the properties and stuff like that. But the way that I'm thinking, the way that I think is probably better is if I just get these classes, and then after that I see how to implement the function, because the context is going to be different. So that makes more sense, I think. The problem might be on the other classes, because they might be more coupled to the base one. But I think even if they are, it's gonna force me to It's probably like faster to decouple these classes first, and then in case I need, couple them later with the other class that I'm going to create. That is based on the context on how they are going to be used. Because the way that I'm thinking about, I think it makes more sense to like put the functionality to update the properties based on the type of the property outside of the function. I don't think inheritance makes a lot of sense here. That's the problem. I think it makes more sense to select the classes from what side. I think that this is the biggest, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think I'm just gonna finish copying this one, and I'm just gonna decouple all of them, even if it's repeating myself more times, because I think that makes a lot more sense. Because then it allows you to use the same stuff, like the same baseline of GUI element for anything you want, rather than forcing you to. Because the main reason I think why they did this is because this class is gonna work as the manager of all the different types that can happen. But I still think that it makes more sense to have like a composition approach here rather than, so like instead of this class, instead of the other classes inheriting from this one, but obviously I don't know very well because I don't understand very well how they use this. But I am thinking more about like I decouple the classes, then later on this class here, I would create a function, for example, that selects which one of these classes should use based on what kind of property it is from the class DB. I think that makes more sense. Yeah, I don't understand why they did inheritance here. My concern is that there's probably reasons, so I don't know. But yeah, I think it's worth trying the other way, probably. So I'm gonna leave it the way that it is there, and I'm gonna continue to copy the way that I was copying the other class, this one. And anything that is related to the inheritance, I'm just gonna change. The reason why it's kind of weird, I might be misunderstanding how the class works, but it's like if this class, the editor property class, is supposed to be the generic class that is gonna manage the property, so like it creates the bridge between the GUI elements and the class DB objects, then this should be like a manager of properties. So I don't understand, because if you do inheritance, then it means that they're gonna work for each one of the properties of the objects. But it might be because this class is meant for a different purpose, and I'm misunderstanding what it's supposed to do. But just based on the names of the functions, I think it makes sense that this one is going to be the one that's based on whatever happens on the GUI element, which is the class that inherits from this, is going to change the property on the object. So this is the thing that is kind of confusing, because it makes more sense. Like, you have one object, you have several properties for each object. And if you do inheritance, it's like you're saying that you are going to have one object for each property, which doesn't make a lot of sense because it's the same object for all of them. So I don't understand very well why it's this way. Yeah. The way that I'm thinking about it is like this class should be outside, and then the class is related to an object. And then this class uses the other one as member variables. Or like, yeah, it has like all of the different types. And then it creates the GUI based on whatever the object has. So for example, we can have a function that's based on whatever object you have here from the class, is going to get the type from the class DB, then it's going to get the properties that the class DB has. And based on the properties and the types of the properties, it creates the GUI from that point, I think. But here, I'm not really sure, like, if this is the point. Well, what is the point of this one? It might be problematic if all of them rely on this. This is the part that is kind of annoying. Because if I do one by one and then I figure out that they rely on this thing. But I guess on the first one I'm gonna be able to see already. So like if this functionality here is related to the way that it looks there, because it creates a visualization, then it might be annoying. But then can't I just change the function here so that it uses, depending what kind of property it is, it calls a function from the things. It's already doing this here. I'm just gonna go with what I'm thinking here. So I'm gonna do the stuff that I said there. So I'm gonna go back to implementing this one. I'm gonna decouple each class that I want to. I'm probably gonna try to implement all of them based on the order there on the main function. So for each one, they're probably gonna use functions from the editor property. I just decouple all of them. Then once I'm able to implement them, then I go back and I think about whether or not I should because I do think that it makes more sense to implement the other ones separate and then do what I was saying. But they might. But even if the look relies on the GUI input that the editor property has, I think it's not gonna be hard to do the same thing. I think maybe it will, but. I think this might be the reason why they did it like this, because each one of them is gonna have like a base functionality that happens here, and then the difference between them is the inheritance, like the specifics of what's gonna happen on each one. So because all of them are gonna have the same. That's gonna be easy to see, I think. If I implement the other one, I'm gonna be able to know, to compare the difference. I think this is the move here. So on the surface, it seems that the only thing that's coupled is read only. Do not override. It's just complaining about the overrides. I think that's probably the case that it does make sense for them. Like they probably did the inheritance just so that it doesn't. But I think that probably the two different approaches make sense. But for what I'm trying to do, it's probably better to decouple, even if I repeat myself more, because it's gonna be a lot simpler. And then once I have the separate classes and I understand how they work and how I can use them to add whatever functionality I want from the outside, so that I can change the state of the graph based on whatever happens on the thing. Once I have that, then I can think about whether or not I want to, because it's probably, like I said, it's going to be different, the stuff that I'm trying to do. Because I think that they're more trying to, instead of changing the state of a specific thing from class B, a specific property using class B, I'm trying to change the values of different classes based on the reference of the object that exists on the class. So I think it's fundamentally different. And then for that, I'm gonna have to implement each time, I think, depending what I wanna do. Well, maybe it does make sense, but I think it makes more sense the way that I'm thinking about to create another class. So after I create like the separate components, GUI components, I create another class that is gonna have some logic, and that class is gonna depend, like it's gonna be based on an object, a specific object, and then I create a function that selects what kind of GUI is gonna show up there based on the properties of the object. I think that's simpler to do it. But maybe not, like, could be wrong. Yeah, he's read only. I'm going to just comment this out for now and see if we can compile. So this one depends on the object. So let me think about this. I think he has to, like the way that I was doing the other one was probably based on the value. But this is the thing, I'm gonna have to understand how it works here. Yeah, I guess this is the part. I think what this is doing is just changing the value of the slider there based on the value of the object. And then this one is gonna come from the class that this one is supposed to inherit from. So it's gonna go into the stuff that I'm talking about, which is the difference in design that I'm thinking about. I think I'm gonna stop streaming here and I'm gonna think about this off stream. like it's not, I think to solve the errors is not hard here, but to think about what is the best approach probably is gonna be, I have to spend some time thinking about this. Here I'm setting the value based on the whatever I pass here. So maybe that's all like the difference is gonna be. So for each function there that it sets the value based on the inheritance, I'm just gonna change the function so that they accept the value. I think that makes more sense. But here is on the event, so it's gonna, yeah, but I can make this as a, so instead of making this here, I just pass this as a member variable of the class. And then I just set this value based on whatever it exists outside. I think that's the main difference is going to be this probably. So every time that I encounter something that depends on the inheritance, I'm just going to remove and either make it as a member variable of the class and probably both. So make it as member variable of the class and then set its state based on some functions, which then allows me to change the state of the class from outside of this class. So I'm going to use these ones from another component in the same way that I was doing here. So instead of physics slider, I'm just going to have these classes here. And then I'm going to create another class, which in this case was custom physics. And then from this class, I'm going to set the state of the sliders based on the branch set parameters thing. I think that this makes more sense. So like I decouple the state of the GUI components, and then I set them based on functions, which allows me to have more flexibility based on the data, I think. And then if I want to create something that is going to update the parameters of objects, all I have to do is just create another class, which is going to be similar to that editor property that I have. But then I set the state based on the, like, the editor property would have the instance of the object that is related to. And then I have a function that based on that object, it gets the properties from the class DB. And then based on the properties, it has like something similar to what they have there that sets the state of the GUI, or creates the whatever the GUI, whatever the object needs based on the classes, the other classes. I think that makes more sense. But obviously I could be wrong, so I might have to just refactor a bunch of times, but I think that's probably the best direction to go now. But I'm going to stop here. So what I'm going to do off stream is just think more about this and probably just continue to copy one class at a time here. And then change the class so that it is not dependent on the other one. Then once I have all the GUI elements that is related to each property there, I think for each one that I do, I'm just going to test on the editor as well to see how it looks and to see if it works in the same way. If it doesn't work in the same way, then I might I'm probably going to rethink the way that I'm doing, because I might have to do the same way, because this is kind of the whole problem, that the editor property might have stuff that is essential to display the elements in the correct way. But even if that's the case, I'm going to think about whether or not like I can just change the functionality so that I make it work for each element separately. Because I think like just intuitively, it feels better that it feels like it should be, each one should be decoupled, because it's like a gradient of data. So like the more generic something is, and the more like applied in a bunch of different places, the more incentivized you are to make it flexible and compose the thing. So it's like an inputs on the front end, for example. It makes more sense to make the inputs as least decoupled as possible from the context in which it's going to be used, because it's something simple that's going to happen all the time. And it makes more sense to put the functionality to couple it in the context in which it's going to be used, which is what I'm trying to do here. So I think that this approach, this line of thinking makes more sense. So we just separate each class so that each one represents its own GUI element, and then should put the context outside of the classes of how they're going to be used. But obviously it might be like I might be misunderstanding how it works here. So I'm going to continue this off stream. Probably going to stream soon, and I'm just going to continue to do this until I have all the GUI elements that I need to build the main thing there that I want. Yeah, so see you next time.